This is going to go badly, but I'm going to give it a try. It's not the cretin. It's this funny guy that seems to have a hangover. I've cut him
Hello,
out.
everyone. Welcome to APTERA Owners Club. This is a recording of Chris Anthony's keynote speech, courtesy of Arturo and Thatcher. So thank you guys very much for getting this recording for us.
I mean, most automobiles actually evolved from the horse and buggy. You got four
He said that before lots of times.
wheels in the corners, and that's just how things have evolved. We kind of took an Elon-inspired first principles engineering approach.
Notice he brings in Elon, Tesla, quite a lot. This is new. It's only because he's at the Tesla takeover. But just about everything else he says is very old and been said many times over.
And said, how do you solve for the most efficient vehicle ever? And we found that aerodynamics is hugely important in overall.
And with aerodynamics, the greatest asset to getting good aerodynamics is to put the passenger behind the driver, or even not have a passenger. The best is one person in the vehicle. Second best is one behind the other. And to put one beside the other is very unaerodynamic. But it's what the gullible want, and he's pandering to the gullible.
Efficiency. You can burn 60 to 70% of your fuel at highway speeds just pushing air out of the way in the city.
That 60% of your fuel pushing air out of the way comment is about 4 years old now.
Sedan or an SUV. So if you start with aerodynamics and you make it very aerodynamic, then you can also solve the other things.
So what is the aerodynamic efficiency? I'm just curious if you know off the top of your head.
Yeah, I mean, our coefficient of drag is roughly 0.13.
He doesn't have to know what roughly is so much now because he doesn't have to rely on that silly CFD that he thinks is 5% accurate. He's done a Pininfarina wind tunnel test, and even though he's kept the results under his hat and not revealed them to us as usual, he knows what the aerodynamics coefficient is to a closer degree than anybody has ever known. If it's around 0.13, then maybe he doesn't need prosecuting for false advertising. But as with all of the incredibly exaggerated claims that they have, they need to give these prototypes up. Should they close or fold, they should give these prototypes up to the authorities. If the reality is not near what they have claimed, there should be truth in advertising, and they have overstepped the mark.
Which is, on par with even some of the solar race vehicles you see, out in Australia, competing, across many, many miles. So we focused on aerodynamics first, then rolling resistance, the weight of the vehicle. Then we got a really efficient powertrain with in-wheel motors. The motors are actually in the wheels for this vehicle, so no transaxle, no drive shaft.
If you don't have a transaxle or a drive shaft, it makes no improvement to aerodynamics. Your transaxle and drive shaft can be sheltered from the frontal wind pressure.
That also makes it more aerodynamic. You put all those together, and we have a vehicle that uses less than 100 watt-hours per mile. So
that's another one that the authorities should test. If they fold, test each prototype to see if it gets 100 watt-hours per mile. And if it's not within QE, if it's not within the 5% they claim is the inaccuracy limits of the computational fluid dynamics, then prosecute them.
Everyone here driving a Tesla, you probably looked at the screen.
That's amazing. It's really amazing.
Burning, and we're burning under 100, so it's super, super efficient. And when you make it efficient, you can do cool things like it charges really fast. We have a 50 kilowatt DC fast charge, supercharged connector, the NAX connector, which we were so...
50 kilowatts is slow charging. It might be called a fast charger, but it's slow charging. If you've got the 600-mile battery or the 1,000-mile battery, then you'll be spending a long time charging it at 50 kilowatts.
So blessed with, superior Tesla technology that we championed and fought hard to get, and now it's open to the world, and GM and Ford and lots of other people have adopted it. So it's amazing technology, but our vehicle charges, 4 to 5 times quicker than all the other electric vehicles at the supercharger because we use so little energy. So you can charge it quick, and then you can add things like solar, which has really meaningful range if you're burning 100 watt hours per mile. So we have 700 watts of solar on top, and then 700 watts can give you over 40 miles a day of free solar charging. Yeah.
People who know about solar all say that this claim of 40 miles per day is pie in the sky. They estimate that it would be at least half that. Once again, it's one thing they need to prove because they're advertising it, and there needs to be truth in advertising.
This vehicle is a standard vehicle, so it has solar panels on the roof and on the dash, but you can also option up to get a solar hood and a solar rear hatch. You put them all together, and that's what gets you the 40 miles a day. As equipped, it gets you kind of 18 miles a day, so it depends on how you drive. I'm sure. Yeah, you know, we as a company didn't start at a very typical place. We didn't start with a market segment or a minimum viable product. We didn't go out and do a focus group to figure out what kind of crossover SUV would work best and how many cup holders we need. We started with the equation for efficiency, and through computational fluid dynamics, we refined the shape of this vehicle such that it looks today, and just whittled down the weight and made the power.
No, they didn't start with that at all. They started with trying to give gullible people the Swiss Army knife of all vehicles. They wanted to say it will do this, that, and the other. And there was about half a dozen features that they said would be what people wanted and tried to advertise it. The camper, the off-roader, the long-distance haul, the short commuter, the sports car, the pose car, you name it. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. The environmentally friendly car. Of course, I've seen this whole thing ahead of time, so these things will be mentioned as he goes. All these things they tried to put into the one vehicle so that the gullible had reasons to put their money down. What he says is a diversion, this thing about efficiency all the time. They didn't reach efficiency. They weren't going for efficiency. They were going to get what the gullible would want in as many ways as possible. And when it comes to efficiency, you need a heat pump in any EV to be most efficient, and they won't even put a heat pump in.
Powertrain more efficient and everything that the vehicle's about, and then we kind of put it out to the world. So we have good information on the type of people that love the APTERA, but we didn't start with like a target customer. We didn't go after people. We tried to make the best engineering solution for efficient transportation, and then luckily we've gotten lots of support. We have 44,000 orders for the APTERA now. Over 16,000 people have invested.
It's not hard to get 44,000 orders. If somebody said to me, you can have a $48,000 product and all you have to do is put $70 down, I'm inclined to order.
In the company, the most successful crowdfunding in the history of America. So I think it's very humbling to have such great support. But the people that we found, Sarah, our wonderful chief marketing officer here, has done amazing research in that mostly people love it for its environmental responsibility, a lot like Tesla, doing better to the planet. The second, kind of, aggressive engineering, kind of bleeding edge engineering.
Aggressive and bleeding edge engineering are terms that he has used for the last 4 years. There is no bleeding edge engineering in it. That's just plain snake oil.
A lot like Tesla. But then again, people really love the unique look of this. So, those three segments are kind of the people that are really drawn to APTERA. Your environmental protectors, people that are intrigued by the cutting-edge engineering, and people that just want the coolest vehicle in their neighborhood. And if you see this thing, rolling down your cul-de-sac, you would definitely look twice.
You're from the future.
Yeah. As Elon says, we're headed into production hell now. There's a lot of moving pieces. So we've chosen to very simplify the design as much as possible. Hopefully some of you get to see Sandy Monroe while you're here. Monroe and Associates has helped us from the beginning to design the most.
Like all of their claims that are unproven, they have said Sandy Monroe has helped in a lot of ways, but we never hear exactly what those ways are, except in the most simplest of terms. I don't believe Sandy has had much of an input at all.
Manufacturable vehicle ever. The body structure of the APTERA consists of only 6 parts. They're carbon fiber SMC parts, so they're stamped out, they're very reproducible, and they don't move like steel or aluminum in the manufacturing process. So they're very easy to put together. So we tried to limit our hell in manufacturing by trying to simplify the vehicle.
The carbon fiber body is much weaker than the composite body that the prototypes are made of. The carbon fibre body is very fragile, and with slight knocks, like a motorcycle helmet, the strength of the body is compromised. It doesn't take much of a knock on a motorcycle helmet to render it useless, and that's the same with carbon fibre. The carbon fibre body is so much weaker that they've had to add a steel-type chassis to it and a steel roll bar or roof strengthening structure to make it safe. Yet they still advertise this 7 times stronger than steel nonsense.
Vehicle, simplify the wiring harness, eliminate connectors, put as much stuff on the screen as possible so there's not a lot of switches around the vehicle, and just make it as brutally simple as possible. It's got a simple interior, it's got modular, every kind of subsystem in the vehicle is modular, so we can just order from a supplier, they deliver it to us, we put in a couple bolts and
The cameraman's gotten bored.
a couple connectors and you're done. So we've hopefully learned from Elon that we need to simplify, and Sandy Monroe has just been a blessing to us to really help us refine this as much as possible. Yeah, front-wheel drive race vehicles, whenever they take an aggressive corner, they actually lift the inside rear wheel. So you only get
The lifting of the inside rear wheel has no benefit whatsoever. It's just what naturally happens when the forces are too great. There is no reason to remove a wheel just because at high speed cars lift their inside rear wheel. That's nonsense.
the advantage of 3 traction patches anyways in aggressive, stability scenarios. So we said, if we could get rid of that 4th wheel, we would pick up aerodynamics, we would lose weight, just do so many things.
The reason why they've gone 3-wheel is well known. It's because they avoid regulations.
To kind of make the vehicle overall more efficient. So we decided to push the weight forward in the vehicle at 65% front weight bias. And
50-50 weight distribution is known to be the optimum distribution for cars. To go 65-35 is going against convention. This thing will handle worse than a piece of soap on a wet day.
it handles, like a dream. We've had it out to the racetrack many times. Skid pad, 60 mile an hour, 45 mile an hour curb strike test. We hit the curb at an angle, pothole test. We kind of put it through the rigors, and it's performed very, very well. And I think that when people get in this vehicle, hopefully when they do the first test drives, they'll feel it's like a lot of other kind of smaller electric vehicles out there. I've had a lot of people say, well, it drives kind of like my Model 3. So
It'll drive like your mum's if you drive like your mum.
I hope that that's what people pick up when it's out on the road. We have a very unique rear suspension. It's a trailing link rear suspension, so the tire doesn't float like a motorcycle. It floats very much like a traditional automotive 4-wheel vehicle. So we hopefully you can do blindfolded side-by-side tests and take them out in a 4-wheel vehicle, then take them out in our vehicle, and really have another difference. Yeah, this vehicle is top speed.
They'll know the difference on a blindfold test because the 4-wheel vehicle will be more comfortable and less noisy.
110 miles an hour. It's electromechanically limited. It's as fast as the voltage can spin the motors. The in-wheel motors are much bigger, so it's a little different scenario than when you have a smaller, higher RPM motor. 0 to 60 is 4.
Another one that they need to verify to see that they're not telling lies in advertising. 110 miles per hour. Calculations have been made that put it at 80 miles an hour at best, but these things need to be figured out. The quarter-mile time, or 0 to 60 time, I should say, that should be known. All they had to do was not turn off the timing lights when they went up the drag strip, but they turned them off. Quite an unusual thing to do.
4 seconds in the all-wheel drive version and 5 seconds in the front-wheel drive version, so you can opt to get the all-wheel drive and add the rear wheel to the drive system. And the launch edition vehicle that we're producing next year has a 400-mile range battery pack, but we also have a 600 and 1,000-mile range battery pack.
I'll leave it at this. I'm about halfway in the timing, and the second half will be part 4 of his rants. At this stage, it really does look like he rehearses these things. They flow off the tongue smoothly, and they are repeated often. But before I go, none of those battery packs exist. None of them. 250, 400, 600, 1000, none of them exist. And in the previous parts, he told Sandy Monroe that they're still looking for a battery supplier. How can you have an existing battery pack if there's no supplier? What they have in these prototypes is something like 5 to 10 kilowatt hours. And once again, no truth in advertising.